Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, we have started historical linguistics and language history and change. That how do languages change with the passage of time? Fine. In today's discussion, we are going to talk about comparative reconstruction. Before going to the discussion, let me remind you that what we discussed in the previous class. If you remember, in the previous class, we talked about cognates. Fine. Cognates means words which have got similar form and similar meaning, and they belong to the same, the same ancestral origin. They have got the same ancestral origin, or they've been derived from the same ancestral or parental language. Fine. For example, the word cantere, the word canter, and the word chanter. These three are the cognates of one another. Fine. The first word belongs to this one, cantare. It belongs to the Italian language. The second one, canter, it is from Spanish, and the last one, chanter, it is from French language. So it means that the word the word cantare, it is in Italian language, and its cognate in the Spanish language is canter, and its cognates in the French language is chanter. Fine. So these are the cognates which we discussed in the previous lecture. Today we have to talk about comparative reconstruction. Now, first of all, what is meant by comparative reconstruction? So comparative reconstruction is actually a technique. Fine. Why do we use it? When we have a set of cognates, for example, this is one set, okay, cantre, uh, canter, and chanter. This is a set of cognates, but we do not know that which of these three forms is the proto form, which of these three form is the most original form. So we cannot decide whether Cantare or Cantor or Shanter. We do not know which one is the oldest form, the most original form. Okay, and which of these two has have been derived from the very first origin. Now, in order to decide this, we use this technique which is known as the comparative reconstruction. Now, this technique it aims to reconstruct what must have been the original or protoform in the common ancestral language. As I told you that we have a set of cognates, fine, and we, for example, word A, okay, and B and C, but we do not know that which one is the original form, which one is the protoform. For example, if this one is the protoform, so B and C, these two words must have been derived from form A, okay, from the original word. But when we do not know, just as I showed you the example, in such a case, what do? We use comparative reconstruction. Like this is a technique with the help of which we determine that which word among a set of cognates must have been the proto word, must have been the most original word, must have been the oldest form. Fine. And the rest of the cognates must have been derived from that original word, from that proto word. So in order to decide that, we use comparative reconstruction. Fine. Now, what are the techniques or the principles of comparative reconstruction? It is got so many principles, but two of them are, most frequently used by the historical linguists. The first one is the majority principle. The second one is the most natural developmental principle. Fine. So let's talk about these two principles in detail. The first principle is the majority principle. It simply says that majority is authority. Okay. For example, if we have a set of three cognates, how many cognates are there? For example, three. Fine. Two of the cognates, among that set of cognates, if two words, for example, two words have got the pa sound, fine, while only one word has got b sound. So here we have two words, they have got the pa sound, and here we have one word which has got the b sound. It means that either one of these two words must have been the protoform, must have been the original form, must have been the oldest word. Fine. Let me give you an example to clarify that. Like we have cantare, we have canter, we have chanter. Fine. So it starts with sh, it starts with k, and it starts with k. Fine. So we have two k sounds and one sh sound. It means that the protoform, the original word among this set of cognates, that word must have been either this one, cantare, or canter, but it can never be chanter because majority is authority. Find the majority principle says that either one of these two must have been the proto word, the original word, and this has been derived later on either from this one or from that one. Okay, so this is simply what the majority principle is. Moving to the second principle, which is the most natural developmental principle. Now this principle has got four sub rules, or you may say four sub principles. The first principle, that is final vowels final vowels often disappear. Okay, for example, this is the oldest form. Okay, this is the older form, the older word, the original word. Okay, and it has been derived later on because we are studying historical linguistics. That is why we are talking about, the derivation of words in the oldest ones, words in the modern words. Now, for example, this is the oldest form. Fine, and this has been derived later on from this original word. So what happens, according to the most natural developmental principle, the first rule one says that final vowels often disappear. Now, if we look at this final vowel, initially it was vino, okay, but later on it became win. Fine. So this is how this is the first principle of the most natural developmental principle, that the final vowels often disappear. Okay, when a word is derived from another word, so obviously the word which is being derived, it must be the modern word, and the word from which it is being derived, that word must be the older form. Fine. So the older form, if the older form is got a final vowel, so that final vowel often disappear, and in the modern term, the modern world no longer possesses that final vowel sound. The second rule in the most natural developmental principle, that is voiceless sounds become voiced, typically between vowels. Fine. Voiceless sounds become voiced. You must be familiar with voiceless and voiced sound. Fine. It's all about the vibration of the vocal cords and vocal folds. Now look at this. Voiceless become voiced, typically between vowels. If we look at this word, muta, fine, it has got a voiceless sound which is between two vowel sounds. Now what happens? This is, for example, the older form. This is the older form, the older word, the proto word. When this word was derived from the proto word, so what happened? The voiceless sound became voiced, and the t sound became da. Fine. So this is how voiceless sounds become voiced sound. So this is the second rule of the most natural developmental process principle. Moving to the third rule, that is stops become fricatives. Now stops and fricatives, Sir Asif, sir must have taught you these things in phonetics and phonology. Stop sounds are the plosive sounds, fine, which are articulated with a sudden burst of air or a sudden, puff of air in the mouth. The English language has got six plosive sounds, which are p, b, t, d, k, and g. Fine. So when there is a stop sound, a plosive sound, it usually becomes fricative. When does it happen? When a word in a modern language or in the modern variety of a language is derived from an older variety or from an older language. So in this in this derivation, in this process, what happens is the plosive sounds become fricatives. Now fricative sounds are those sounds, during the articulation of which two articulators, two speech organs are brought close together, and the air forces its way out and thus produces a sort of friction between the articulators. Such sounds are called the fricative sounds. In the English language we have got nine fricative sounds that are f and v, s, z, sh, j, and th, and the last one is the h sound. Fine. So these plosive sounds become fricative sounds, as you can see this example. Ripper, the older form was Ripper. When this word was derived, fine, from the older form, the plosive sound, the stop sound, it it was converted into V sound and it became river. Instead of Ripper, it became river. So rule number three, moving to the last rule of the most natural developmental process, consonants become voiceless at the end of words. When there are consonant sounds at the end of words and those consonant sounds are voiced sounds, fine, voiced sounds are those sounds during articulation of which the vocal cords, fine, or the vocal folds, they are made to vibrate. So and voiceless are those during the articulation of which these vocal cords, vocal folds, they do not vibrate. So what happens, in this process of derivation, consonants become voiceless at the end of words. Keep in mind, at the end of words, that is necessary, that is a must. Now, we have an example, Rizu. So, if you look at this sound, it is voiced, fine, because the vocal cords are made to vibrate. If you put your hand on your throat simply and you make an attempt to utter the word Rizu, you will, you will feel the vibration with the help of the tip of your fingers. So on the other hand, if you make such an attempt to analyze the sound, you will feel no vibration, fine. So sound is voiceless and is voiced. So what happens, voiced sounds usually becomes they usually become voiceless, fine. So these are the four rules inside the most natural developmental process principle. So we have got two principles in comparative reconstruction. The first one is the majority principle, and the second one is the most natural developmental principle. Now, let's go for some examples and to find out that how are sounds reconstructed with the help of these principles. Fine. Uh, Sound reconstruction means, like, look at these three words. This one has got k sound, fine, cantare. This one has got again k sound, it starts with ka, cantare, and this one starts with sh, that is shanter, fine. So sound reconstruction means to re-establish, to determine, to decide that which sound is the original sound, fine. The original sound mean that, like, we do not know that which one among these three members, these three cognates, is the oldest form, fine. So in order to find out that which one is the oldest form and which sound is the oldest one, either the this one, the cantare or the canter or the shanter, so we have got ka, we have got sha. So in order to decide this, we have to go for sound reconstruction, fine. These are sets of cognates, fine. The words which are here under A, they are from the Italian language, fine. The words beneath B, they are from the Spanish language, and the words listed under C, they are from the French language. Now let's look for the sound reconstruction, that whether the original form was with the K sound or with the sh sound. So what can we do? Look at this, the majority principle first. Look at the majority principle first. Here we have got k, cantare. Here we have got canter. Here we have got shanter. Fine. So we have k1. We have got k2 again, and here we have got sh. Now, if we look at the majority principle, we have got two k sounds, like two words have got the k sound, while only one word has got the sh sound. So the majority principle says that the older form had the k sound and not the sh sound. Fine. Same is the case with these other set of cognates. Like, if you look at this, the second set of cognates, that is uh, Katina, Kadina, and China. Fine. So we have got here we have got ka, again we have got ka, and here is sha. So according to the majority principle, the ka sound is the original one, okay, the oldest one, the proto one, and this is the modern term. Fine. Same is the case with this, caro and share. So we have got again two ka sounds and one sh sound, and same is the case with the last set of cognates as well. Now look at the most natural developmental process principle, the second one. Again, if we get back to the rules, four rules of the most natural developmental principle. Fine. Here we may go for the rule number, uh, yes, rule number three. If you look at rule number three, fine, stops become fricatives. It means that initially words have got the stop sounds, I mean the plosive sounds such as po, bo, t, d, k, or go. Fine, these six sounds are the plosive sounds or the stops. Now, initially words have got these stop sounds, and later on, when a new language or the variety of the same language but a modern variety, when that variety borrows the word from the older variety or from the older language, what happens that those words are borrowed, they are derived with the fricative sounds. Fine. And not like simply the plosive sound, the stops, they are converted into fricatives. Now if we look at this example and we apply the most natural developmental principle, we will come to know that which sound is the original one, the proto one. Fine. So we have ka here, ka, and we have sha. Is the rule number two of the majority principle reads that stops become fricatives. If you look at this, ka is the stop sound, the plosive sound. Fine. While sh is the fricative sound. It means that initially it was the ka sound. Fine. And later on it has been derived from the ka sound, and it is it has become shanter. So the original sound, the proto sound or the proto form, you may say, that is canter or canter, but not shanter. Shanter is the the latest form, the modern form, the new form. So this is how we reconstruct, we decide that which which sound was the original sound used in the words of a set of cognates. This is sound reconstruction. We may apply the same thing for sound, for word reconstruction as well, in order to decide that which word or which form must have been the protoform. Fine. Look at this one. This set of cognates, mobe, mope, and mope. Fine. Going for the majority principle first. Here we have b, here p, and again here we have p. Fine. So if we apply the majority principle, we have got two p sounds, p sound number one and p sound number two, but here we have got only one b sound. Fine. So it means that the original form, the proto form, it must have either been this one, mope or mope. Fine. In the same, but not this one. In the same way, here we have the b sound. It is its pronunciation might be somewhat like a birdie. Fine. These are the languages which we are not familiar with. uh, a birdie. So here we have a party and we have a part. Fine. So we have the b sound here in d. Now, if we look at this, instead of b, we have p. Instead of b, we have p. It means we have got one b sound and two p sounds. So the majority principle says that either this form or this form must have been the original word. Fine. And this one must have been derived later on from either of these two. In the same way, we have here the d sound, and here we have t, and we have t. So it is further confirmed. Fine. Same is the case with these words as well. These set of cognates, like the third set of cognates, it has got ga. Here we have k and k. So we have got two k sounds and one g sound. It means that either of these two must have been the original form, the proto form. Fine. In the same way, here we have g, k, and k. So the majority principle again prefers either of these two. Now, this is confirmed so far. Either of these two forms must have been the original forms, fine, the protoforms, but not this one. But here is a question, that which one among these two? I mean, uh, number two and number three, either, for example, either Mopi is the original form or Mope. We're not sure. Now, in order to further decide this, we have to look for the most natural developmental principle. Let's get back to the rules. Here, look at rule number two. Fine. Voiceless sounds become voiced, typically between vowels. Fine. Voiceless sounds become voiced, typically between vowel sounds. Okay, fine. Or better if we could apply that one, the first principle. Okay. Look at principle number one. This one, fine vowels often disappear. Okay, because here if we apply rule number two, so rule number two says that voiceless sounds become voiced typically between vowel sounds. So we have here voiceless between vowel sounds. Okay, voiceless sound, and it is later on become voiced. So it means that this was the initial, the older form, and later on it is become it is become voice sound. So this is the new form, and it must have been the older form, the proto form. Fine. So this is rule number two. Again, rule number two proves that these forms are the original forms. Fine, original, I mean the protoform, the older forms, and these are the later forms, the new forms, the modern forms. So in order to draw a line between these two to find out the oldest form, between 2 and 3, we have to apply principle number 1, rule number 1 of the most natural developmental principle. It reads that final vowels often disappear. It means that initially words have got the final vowel sounds, but later on those vowel sounds disappear. Fine. So we can infer from this that words which have got the final vowel sound, they must be the original form, the proto form, and words in which the final vowel sounds have disappeared, they must be the later forms, the modern forms. So if you look at these examples, here we have got the sound, fine, mope. Here it is got disappeared. So this one is the older form, the original form, 2, and 3, it is the later form, the modern form. Okay. Similarly, among these two, apati and apart, we have got apati, the final vowel sound. It was the older form, and then when this word was derived, okay, so the final vowel sound, it got disappeared. So this is the older form, and it is sorry, this is the new form, fine, and it was the older form. Then we have a canna and a can. So if we look at this vowel sound again, it does exist here. So this is the older form, and when later on this word was derived from that one, so the vowel sound, it got disappeared during the process of derivation. So this is the modern word because it is being derived later on. Fine. Moving to the last example, again we have the vowel sound here. It was the older form, and later on it is got disappeared here. So it means that this is the original form, and later on this one is derived later on. Fine. And this was the original form. So this is the process of reconstruction, sound reconstruction and word reconstruction, that how do we trace that what must have been, which form must have been the original form. Okay. To summarize, comparative reconstruction is a technique to use which is used to find out the original form, the protoform, the oldest form in a set of cognates. Fine. It has got two principles. The first one is the majority principle, and the second one is the most natural developmental principle. Fine. This is the majority principle. For example, if there is a set of cognates, fine, a set of 5 cognates, for example, 5. Okay. So if you have got 3 or 4 words which have got one sound, for example, the sh sound, for example, or any sound, for example, the k sound. Three words have got the k sound, and only two words have got the g sound. It means that the older form is the word with the k sound, and the word with the g sound is the new form, the modern form. Okay, then we have got the most natural developmental process. So it has got these four sub principles. If we apply these principles, the majority principle and the most natural developmental principle, we will come to know that which form, which word or which sound among a set of cognates must have been the original form, the original word. So this is all about today's discussion. Fine. And in the coming lecture, inshallah, we'll talk about the history of the English language. Thank you so much. Stay home, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.